Through the years, the Fox Hollow farm stood empty in the deserted estate, heralding passers-by the untold secrets that went away with its owner. Being incredibly cheap, you would think people would ravish the chance of getting their hands on it, but the story was different. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with it, as its previous owner was the much-loathed serial killer, Baumeister. Baumeister was an ordinary child from a family who was reported to have developed antisocial tendencies since adolescence. His anomalous acts of playing with dead animals and urinating on his teacher's desk alienated him from society. In his teenage years, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia whose treatment was left incomplete, leading to severe psychiatric disorders in adulthood. He could never keep his job and was often described as a workaholic with strange behavioral patterns by his colleagues. He got married in 1971 to a woman named Julie and had 3 children. Though his life resembled a normal mentally unstable man's, he had a dark secret waiting to be discovered, to just sprout its wings and fly. The investigators of the Marion County Sheriff started investigating some strange disappearances of gay men in the early 1990s, around the Indianapolis area. In 1993, they tracked down the existence of a man named Ron Rosen from a gay bar patron who claimed that this man had killed his friend and was now after his life. The search for this unknown man led the investigators to Baumeister, and they asked to search his house. Baumeister and his wife strongly protested the search, and the police reached a dead end. However, by 1996, Julie became alarmingly frightened of her husband's erratic behavior and mood swings and filed for a divorce. While he was away on a business trip, she consented to a search of the entire 18-acre land, and there turned up the remains of 11 men, out of which only 5 could be identified. To escape the authorities, Baumeister flew to Ontario, where he committed suicide at Pioneer Provincial Park by shooting himself in the head, leaving behind a suicide note that described failing marriage and business to be the reason for his suicide. However, he did not confess to the murders. Because of the rumors that surrounded the Fox Hollow farm, nobody wanted to buy it. However, the real estate owner sold it to a Rob and Vicky Graves. They reluctantly purchased the apartments because of its cheap price and moved into it with their 2 teenage sons. It first started with Vicky experiencing some unexplainable occurrences one day when she had a vacuum cleaner extension cord unplugged out of the board. She inserted it tightly back into the plug point, dismissing it as just having a loose connection. However, the same thing happened again. That alarmed her, and the incident occurred 3 times in a row. She almost felt like she was being watched and sensed something that did not want her there. Rob worked at a car dealership. He had a colleague named Joe LeBlanc who had a later schedule, as he lived miles away from his workplace. Rob, wanting to be of help, offered to let Joe move into the spare apartment on the estate. Joe seemed unfazed by the rumors shrouding the Fox Hollow farms and moved into the apartment with his pet dog, Fred. However, his life turned into a hell since that night. When Joe and Rob had finished moving all of Joe's belongings into the house, Joe was beat tired. Without bothering to get any dinner, he crashed for the night and started dreaming about strange things. He saw himself running in the dream, trying to escape something he did not know. With a bad habit of sleepwalking, he started running in his sleep. He woke up after hitting the door frame and fell to the floor covered with shards of glass everywhere, which got into his hands. He couldn't wrap his head around what was happening, but just ignored it. The strange phenomena continued with Vicky spotting a man in a red t-shirt standing in their yard one day when she came back from work. She saw him turn around and walk away, but she couldn't see his legs. When Rob and her hurried over to follow him, they saw nothing. The same thing happened with Joe when he was walking Fred, his dog, along the gravel driveway. Fred heard something in the woods. As Fred neared it, Joe saw a man in a red t-shirt walking into the woods. Fred, not wasting a minute, went chasing after him, with Joe tagging along right after. Though they had gone a long distance into the forest, they still couldn't find the man. Joe decided to head back home with Fred and went to get hold of his leash. However, he jolted in alarm and growled, all of his hair standing up, looking at something behind Joe. Confused, Joe turned around and came face to face with the man in a red t-shirt. Naturally, he was terrified. Adrenaline kicked in and he ran all the way back to the apartment with Fred tagging behind close to him and locked himself up in his room with the dog. His head started spinning and he felt shivers running down his spine at just the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Not quite understanding what was going on, petrified, he sat against the door and waited for the day to come. With the first rays of the morning sun, Joe went to Rob and Vicky to tell them about his experiences from the night before. Vicky, upon hearing about a man with a red t-shirt, recounted her experiences with him to Joe, knowing full well about the history of the estate and about loads of human remains buried there. They tried to research the Baumeister case to uncover some of his victims. Joe seemed awfully convinced that the man in the red t-shirt was the spirit of one of the murdered men, who was calling out to them to discover his remains. This theory of his seemed even more accurate when he found a femur bone in the woods on a leaf, kept as if waiting to be discovered by him. After that day, Joe stopped going for a walk at night with Fred. They reported their findings to the lead detective, who agreed to show up and identify the places where the incidents had taken place. The place where Baumeister had killed his victims was a swimming pool. It had many mannequins submerged in it and were filled with gravel. Baumeister would lure these gay men to the pool and choke them to death. While investigating the pool with some friends, Joe got down into the pool and started looking around. However, when he had gone some distance into the water, he felt someone gripping his neck and choking him. He kicked and splashed inside the water, much to his surprise of his friends, but got out alive, at last. As time went by, the hauntings continued. Joe decided he had had enough of it. One day, when he was working at his computer, devising ways to uncover the unidentified victim, he heard some metallic sounds in the kitchen. He went to have a look but found no one there. But his kitchen knives were laid on the counter and there were cuts in the wood walls. Joe's heart started beating loudly in his chest. He pulled out his phone and switched on the recorder. "Is anyone here?" he asked. And as soon as he had finished, Fred started growling and barking from beside him. This made him certain that there was someone in the house. He turned off his recorder and transferred the recording to his computer and hit the play button. He heard his voice, and right after that, some static followed, and a harsh gurgling voice said, "The married one." Joe gasped. From all of his research, he knew well enough that all of the Baumeister's victims were single men, but the only one married was Baumeister himself.